After Caspian had placed Win on his bed, he made his way to the office and settled down on the couch. He tried to sleep, but his mind was filled with a whirlwind of thoughts. Win, his father, and the upcoming jewelry conference in South Korea were all competing for his attention. He needed rest, especially considering he was scheduled to travel the next day. But Win's reckless behavior weighed on his mind. How could she get so drunk and carelessly enter just any car? It wasn't his responsibility, yet he felt compelled to give her a stern warning. She needed to be more careful.
Sir, did you sleep here, sir?
What time is it? What's on my schedule today?
Just past 7, sir. As for your schedule, you have a meeting with the marketing department at 8:30.
Kaisen informed him.
Also, your father wishes to meet with you at 11 a.m.
At what?
He didn't specify, sir.
Kaisen replied.
All right.
Caspian sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair.
As Win arrived at the office.
Not yet, sir.
Kaisen responded.
Should I tell her to come see you when she does?
Caspian shook his head and added as the assistant left his office.
Thank you, Kaisen.
He would send her a message instead. He emailed her to let her know he had spent the night at the office and that she should resume work today. As Caspian got up, he retrieved a spare toothbrush and clothing he kept in the office for such occasions. As he dressed and prepared for the day, he briefly considered the idea of placing a bed in his office for nights like this. A quiet chuckle escaped him as he dismissed the thought. It was a bit much.
Win.
Anna yelled excitedly as she walked into the office with Luke and saw the other woman at her desk.
Good morning, Luke, Anna.
Win greeted as she stood up and enveloped Anna in a big hug.
How are you feeling now?
Anna asked with smiling eyes.
Hungover?
Win admitted, groaning, her head was pounding, and it would take a miracle for her to get through the day.
Giselle invited me to a party last night, and I might have drunk more than I can handle.
Anna laughed and sat on the edge of Win's desk.
Partying with Giselle?
I was surprised too.
At that moment, Olivia entered the office.
Good morning, Olivia.
Win called out in greeting, but the other woman didn't pay her any attention. Win looked at Anna.
Did something happen to her?
Shrugging her shoulders, Anna stood up from Win's desk.
She's been in a good mood lately. She even brought a cake for a birthday 3 days ago.
Anna offered.
Really? I didn't know that.
Well, you weren't at work. Apart from the hangover, you're fine, right? Win nodded and smiled at her friend. She thought about going to ask Olivia if something was wrong, but the woman was about to enter Jerry's office. She made a mental note to ask her later. Also about Caspian. Would it be right to pretend nothing happened or to go thank him? She had already acted unprofessionally enough. Wouldn't it be more embarrassing if she had to face him right after? As she looked up, she saw Olivia and Jerry coming out of the latter's office, and Win wanted to go meet them when someone from behind her called her name.
Miss Win.
Her first thought was that Caspian had come to look for her, but when she turned around, it was his assistant, Kaisen. Instead, Win had only had a handful of interactions with him, and they all had been Caspian-related, so this was probably the same. She also wanted to tell him that he could call her by her name alone.
Yes?
Was this about last night?
Mr. Leroy and Miss Giselle will be going to South Korea tomorrow.
No, it wasn't. Kaisen's voice was the type that boomed when he spoke, so even when speaking normally, his voice traveled across the whole room, and everyone in the room turned to look at him.
Oh!
Win's face fell. Had Caspian asked him to come here just to tell her that? Why?
They'll be going this evening.
Okay, but what did this have to do with her? But Kaisen wasn't done speaking.
As part of a learning experience, Mr. Leroy has asked that you also come to South Korea. You'll be going with me.
Win's face twisted with confusion.
What?
She spluttered as she looked at Kaisen. Caspian wanted her to come with him. Not Olivia, not Jerry, but her. She was sure there was a look of shock on her face. But this was all surprising.
Why?
Well,
The corners of Kaisen's lips twisted into an amused smile.
like I said, it'll be a learning experience. So when you get home, pack a bag for a stay of about 5 days and be at the office by 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay.
Win nodded energetically. She was still stunned, but also felt giddy inside. Caspian thought of her and asked her to come. He wanted her to be there.
Thank you.
Why she was thanking him, she wasn't sure. Maybe because she was excited.
Thank you.
she added again, and she could have sworn she saw Kyson try to hold back his laughter before he left.
Win it. Congratulations. It'll be an amazing opportunity for you to get Hanson experience and see it live.
Thank you, Olivia.
Wynn said, noticing that the woman was still carrying her bag.
Are you going somewhere?
Olivia nodded.
I have to take care of something.
She said with a strong tone and look in her eyes.
Win.
Wynn flickered her eyes straight ahead and saw Jerry gesturing for her to come. Anna caught her hand and squeezed it as she walked past, giving her a smile as she whispered.
Congratulations.
You wanted to see me?
Wynn asked as she entered Jerry's office. The man pointed at a chair and asked her to take a seat before speaking.
This is going to seem out of place, but when you go to South Korea, I need you to keep an eye on Caspian. What?
Wynne's eyes widened as her head tilted in confusion.
You want me to keep an eye on Mr. Leroy? If I may ask, why, sir?
Personal reasons.
He said simply, like that was all she needed to know.
All you have to do is watch what he does, and when you get back, tell me everything. Can I count on you, Win?
Olivia walked out of the office with a determined look in her gaze. Last night, her boyfriend, Nathan, had tried to take back the bag he had given her for her birthday. When she confronted him, he finally came clean about the situation surrounding it. Their conversation went a little something like this. Upon her return home, Olivia noticed Nathan pacing nervously in the living room. He barely greeted her before hastily exiting the house. About an hour later, he returned and retreated to their room. Olivia, always attentive, went to meet him to ask what the matter was. It was then that she noticed him trying to hide the bag he had gifted her, the same bag she had carried to the office every day since she received it.
What are you doing?
She asked, reaching out to take the bag from him. But Nathan hadn't been willing to let go, so a tug-of-war ensued.
Let it go, Olivia.
Nathan yelled as he continued to wrestle with the bag.
What's going on, Nathan? You gave this to me.
Olivia asked, bewildered and growing frustrated at the thought of him trying to take it back. She cherished the bag deeply, especially since it was the first gift he had given her in 4 years.
I'll get you another one. Just please let this one go.
In shock, Olivia released her grip on the bag, causing the handle to break.
What's going on, Nathan? Please tell me.
She begged, her hand on her boyfriend's shoulder, even as he looked to be on the verge of tears. Nathan hesitated before finally explaining everything. Now, Olivia was on her way to the coffee shop where he worked. She had a sinking feeling that the broken bag would lead to some awkward situations. But despite her disappointment in Nathan, she wasn't going to let him face embarrassment alone. Winner returned home brimming with excitement, and even Raymond noticed the change in her mood compared to the past week.
Did something good happen at work?
He asked with an inquisitive smile, nodded, biting her lip as she tried to hide her smile.
Wait, before you spill the beans, can we talk about what happened last night / this morning?
This elicited a groan from Wynn.
I know, Ray. Lesson learned. I shouldn't have passed out in a random car. It was dumb. I know.
When?
Ray was appalled.
You entered a random car?
He hadn't known about this part.
In my defense, it was yellow and looked like a taxi.
She said, trying to defend herself, even though she knew how foolish it had been. If it hadn't turned out to be Caspian's car, something bad might have happened to her. No, it would definitely have.
I'm never drinking again. I promise.
She declared, lifting 2 fingers in Ray's face.
You're a hopeless case,
Ray said with a laugh.
Now, tell me what happened that's making you so happy.
He propped his hands on the head of the couch and looked at her eagerly, throwing her bag on the floor. Wynn flopped down next to him and rested her chin on his hands.
Well, I'm traveling for a business trip.
Traveling? That's what's making you so excited. Or is there something else?
This elicited a groan from Wynn.
Okay, fine.
She confessed as she wiggled her chin on his hands.
Caspian.
Ray froze.
Good for you, Wynn,
he said, but it wasn't sincere, and he moved his hands away, causing Wynn's chin to hit the couch hard.
Ow!
She glared at him before getting up from the couch.
Anyway, I'm going to pack my bag for tomorrow and go to bed early.
She waved at him as she entered her room, shutting the door behind her. Raymond felt conflicted as he lay down on the couch, his hands behind his head to cushion them. This wasn't good for him. If he didn't want Wynn to end up with Caspian, he had to act fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking.
As Gazelle leaned back in the seat next to him, double-checking that her seatbelt was properly fastened, Caspian had a lot on his mind. He had met with his father earlier in the afternoon, and their conversation had left him feeling frustrated. Returning to his childhood home wasn't something he did often, but Samuel had asked him to meet him there. When he arrived at the house he had lived in throughout his childhood, Caspian's father was waiting in the study, a room Caspian had been forbidden from entering when he still lived there.
Dad.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Samuel ordered, completely skipping the pleasantries, settled into the leather chair and waited for his father to speak, stared at his son for a few moments before clearing his throat.
I hear you're going to South Korea.
Should have known this was what his father wanted to talk about. He should have realized it immediately, but somehow it had slipped his mind. Also clearing his throat, he replied,
Yes, sir.
Why? Why?
It might have seemed like his father was genuinely curious, but Caspian knew better.
For this year's jewelry conference, Dad. It's being held in South Korea this year.
Looked at his son with distrust,
Is that all?
gave a curt nod.
If you're entertaining any ideas about finding your mother,
Oh, there it was. The real reason he had called Caspian over.
need I remind you that she was the one who asked for a divorce, and the thought of taking you didn't cross her mind at all.
Had heard this speech a million times. It was irritating. His father always reminded him at every chance that his mother had abandoned him, but Caspian knew better. He had lived with the man for years and knew for a fact that his mother had been sent away, and her not taking him had not been her decision. Samuel Leroy continued speaking.
Your mother, your mother.
His face twisted with distaste as he spoke about her.
I gave her everything she asked for, but she was never satisfied. It was never enough for her, which is why she decided to leave. You know that, right?
I understand.
And the only reason I married Jerry's mother was for your sake. You also know that, don't you? Sure, he knew.
Is that all, Dad?
Caspian stood up from the chair.
I've heard all you have to say, and I understand. I'll be leaving now.
Samuel grunted to show that he had heard.
It's a long flight, so I'm going to take a nap.
Gazelle told him as she put on her sleep mask and leaned back in her seat. It's a long flight, so I'm going to take a nap, Giselle told him as she put on her sleep mask and leaned back in her seat. Caspian took out his phone. He still had some work to finish up before they arrived.
It's been damaged.
Back at the coffee shop, Nathan handed the bag with the broken handle back.
This isn't how it was before, so you're going to pay for damages. You're going to pay for the bag in full.
The customer, who had left the bag, wasn't around, but she had sent someone to collect it. In the coffee shop, the three of them, the owner, Nathan, and the bag's collector, were the only occupants.
The full price. Can't I just pay for the handle?
The woman shook her head firmly.
You broke it, you buy it.
Just as Nathan was about to ask about the total amount he had to pay, Olivia stormed into the shop.
This costs around $500. It was released 3 years ago and is now out of season.
She rifled through her purse and slapped some bills on the counter.
Here. That settles things. Now, if we're done here, I'm taking my boyfriend home.
Olivia turned to Nathan.
Let's go.
Without arguing, he removed the apron from around his neck and followed Olivia out of the shop. The next day when Wynn arrived at the office, Kyson was waiting for her out front. Immediately, they set out, and in a matter of minutes, they arrived at the airport. All through the flight, Wynn had butterflies in her belly as she thought about what was about to happen. Meanwhile, Kyson used the opportunity to sleep for the entirety of the flight. When they arrived in South Korea, it was already the day of the conference. After Kyson checked them into their hotel rooms, Wynn barely had enough time to do her hair and makeup before he came knocking on her door, telling her it was time to leave.
Wynn, thank goodness you're here.
Giselle's distressed voice called her name.
I'm sorry to do this, but I have to go with Caspian to greet a Veep, and my dress got wet.
She pointed at the wet patch at her bust area. The dress Giselle wore was adorned with different gems and was absolutely stunning. Wynn looked down at her plain dress.
You want to switch that with this?
She pointed at Giselle's dress, then at hers. Giselle gave an energetic nod of her head as she looked at Wynn with pleading eyes.